Xenoblade Chronicles 2 released for the Nintendo Switch recently to glowing reviews across the board. The title is the latest game in Nintendo's Xenoblade series and follows 2015's Xenoblade Chronicles X. Its predecessor made numerous different changes when it was localized for Western countries. Due to this, questions began to arise over whether the localization of Xenoblade 2 would have similar changes. And so this video will be taking a look at Xenoblade 2's localization and some of the ways it was changed outside of Japan. The first thing to bring up is the many name and terminology changes that were made to the Western release. Listed here are the names of the characters displayed on Nintendo's official website, and the Japanese version is displayed to the left and the English version on the right. As you can see, numerous of the characters were renamed outside of Japan. Pyra, for instance, was originally called Homura over in Japan. Both names are similar in meaning, with Homura being a Japanese word for flame and Pyra being a Greek word for flame. It's possible that the localizers felt that the latter will be more natural sounding for Western audiences, but there are no official statements on why changes like these were made. Whilst Pyra's name change kept the original Japanese meaning, many of the other changes either don't or make the meaning more obscure. For example, Dromark wasn't called Dromark in Japan, but Byakko. Byakko is the name of one of the 4 mythological creatures in the Chinese constellation, and represents the white tiger of the West. For the English version though, it's not really clear where the name originates from. Additionally, as stated, many of the names were changed, and not just main characters like those listed here, but minor characters, names of places and organizations, terminology, and more. There are so many changes like these that Censored Gaming should really make a separate video sometime taking a look at them all. Out of the 17 characters listed here, however, 12 of them were altered outside of Japan, and all of these have interesting points to say about them. To move away from that though, and onto Xenoblade 2's visual presentation. You may recall how the previous game made many changes outside of Japan to things like costumes, with this leading to the Western designs being less revealing in nature. These changes also affected male outfits, and was accompanied by the complete removal of the chest size slider in the character creation. Xenoblade 2, however, has been handled very differently. There have been no changes like this discovered in the Western version, and all graphics have been kept the same as in Japan. Many of the characters will still also be quite provocative at times in terms of their appearance, such as the ice-themed blade Dahlia. Whilst the graphics were kept consistent between the versions though, the same can't be said for the game's dialogue. It wasn't just the names and terminology altered in the Western release, but also some of the conversations that characters will have. This leads to things like personality changes for certain characters and differences in characters' stories. Some of these changes also tone down potentially objectionable content. To begin with Tora's grandpa, Susu, who's not visually depicted in the game but will be brought up in the dialogue in many different scenes. In one of these scenes you can ask Tora what sort of person his grandpa was, and this leads to him describe his grandpa as a bit of a shut-in who was focused very heavily on his work. In the English version he is described as spending large amounts of time looking at photo books of blades, and that he was really passionate about their appearance and mannerisms. It is then said that due to this passion, Poppy became the blade she is today. The original intent behind this scene is somewhat hinted at in the English version, but over in Japan it is very direct and explicit. The photo books of blades were also vastly different. In the Japanese version, instead of locked away studying photo books of blades, it is erotic books of women. It is then these erotic books that led to Poppy's different designs. Poppy also mentions that his activities seem like a crime. So there you have it, that's the Japanese backstory of Tora's grandpa Susu, and what would ultimately lead to the creation of Poppy. But to move away from that and onto Poppy herself. The first thing to bring up about Poppy is a change that was made to her name outside of Japan. In the Japanese version, her name is instead Hana, which is Japanese for flower. The English name Poppy is also of course flower related, and so with this the localizers kept the original meaning intact. There was another change made to Poppy's name though, and this applies to all 3 of her different forms. In the English version she will either be called Poppy Alpha, Poppy QT, or Poppy QT Pi. In the Japanese version though, she will be called either Hana JS, Hana JK, or Hana JD. The significance with the Japanese version is that all of these acronyms are used to describe different Japanese education years. The idea is that as Poppy's model develops, the education year acronym goes up too. This was something that wasn't carried over to the Western release. An example of a scene involving Poppy being changed is the bunny armor scene. You can't actually see the armor in either version, but the scene involves the characters discussing some new armor that's been designed for Poppy, and in the English version this is a fluffy bunny costume. Poppy says that its additional function is to cheer up Tora with extreme cuteness, but the other characters are dubious about this and believe that's the armor's only purpose. There's also a tail wiggle dance special feature to boost the cheer up effect even further. This leads the gang to scold Tora for dressing Poppy so ridiculously. Tora then goes on to blame his grandpa and father for the design designs, which Poppy confirms and says the bunny armor has been passed down through generations, with each of them improving on the design. But she then goes on to add that it was Tora who finally completed the design by adding the tail wiggle dance protocol, and so the harsh criticism directed towards Tora continues from the other characters. The Japanese version, however, goes pretty differently. Instead of cute bunny armor, the armor was originally bikini armor. The bikini armor's special feature was changed to match, with this now being an armor purge feature, where when it takes an attack, the section of the bikini that gets hit falls apart. Like the English version, it was revealed that Tora isn't responsible for the overall design, but his father and grandpa. However, also like the English version, it is then revealed that Tora was the one to finish it, by adding the armor purge feature, which leads the other characters to get mad at him. Another of Poppy's scenes that was changed was the scene with Poppy Cutie Pie, where she is asked about additional functions. In the English version, she activates what is called dog mode and starts barking like a dog.
What's going on?
Dog mode.
This embarrasses Tora, who tells her to immediately shut it off. He explains that this mode was for walks in the park, but was sealed so people wouldn't think he was weird. Zeke then agrees, saying that it's more than a little weird, and then asks Tora why he doesn't just get a real dog. Over in Japan, however, this mode is a little different. This is what happens when the function is activated in Japan. As you heard, the dog-like barking is much more minimal. She does still make dog barking noises though, with the Japanese onomatopoeia for dog barking being the word one, but unlike the English version, she has much more dialogue than this. The Japanese script has her saying things that will be all cute and sweet for everybody, and basically she turns into a sort of cute and innocent servant. The Japanese version also makes no mention of walking dogs in the park, with Tora just saying that people will be very suspicious of that personality, and so she must seal it off. Zeke doesn't mention Tora getting a dog either, but instead scorns him and asks if this is his hobby. Another character that has some notable script changes outside of Japan is Shiba. Shiba is a rich girl who only cares about beauty, wealth, and banquets. She travels around in a floating bathtub in search of an entourage full of charming ladies, so that they can have graceful tea parties. The charming ladies part is something that will be reflected very much in her character. She will pay most of her attention to the female party members and will often give them compliments. She also has skills such as Entitled Entourage, which increases damage by 20% for each female in battle, and Eye for Beauty, which looks for girls to add to her entourage. Over in Japan though, this is all very different. She isn't looking for an entourage in the Japanese version, instead she is looking for cute girls to form a harem.
そのためには可愛い女子たちを愛人として集め、ハーレムを作る必要があるというわけじゃ。
A harem is a type of relationship where one person will receive love and affection from many different people, and in Shiba's case she is looking for as many cute girls as possible. This implies that Shiba has strong lesbian feelings in the Japanese version. To go along with this, her Japanese dialogue will also be much more flirtatious in nature when talking to the other girls. These are just a few examples of ways that suggestive or potentially objectionable dialogue was toned down outside of Japan. Another example, for instance, occurs when Pyra says that she will be able to help in raising money, to which Gramps replies, "Nothing illegal, I hope." In the Japanese version though, he says "you don't mean your body," referring to prostitution or some other taboo form of her raising money with her body. Overall though, Xenoblade 2 is a very big game and toning down moments like these are pretty rare. To just bring up a few more of the name and terminology changes mentioned earlier though. Elysium, the fabled location that supposedly rests at the top of the Will Tree, is instead called Raikun in the Japanese version. Raikun is a generic term for paradise and can be used for all manner of religions. Elysium on the other hand is a form of the afterlife from specifically ancient Greek beliefs. Within Xenoblade 2, Elysium was a true utopia, and the people there lived in bliss with their creator, the architect. However, one day they were suddenly cast out and made to live in the world below. The architect in the Japanese version instead goes by the name Sosei no Kami, which means God of Creation. The Aegis, Xenoblade 2's legendary weapon that carries Pyra and Mithra as its incarnations, was also renamed in the West. In Japan, it is called Tenno Seihai, meaning Heavenly Holy Grail. Its English name, however, is based on a shield from ancient Greek mythology. There are other changes like these, and from them it appears that perhaps the localizers wanted to tone down certain religious elements for Western audiences. As mentioned at the start of the video though, the script changes to the game are vast and extend well past toning down provocative elements. For example, some of the changes are pretty random in nature, such as this scene. Here Rex asks Pyro what date it is, and she says it's Amathotober 5th, 4058. In the Japanese version though, there isn't a month called Amathotober at all. Originally she just said that it's September 5th, 4058, meaning that this is something that the localizers decided to add in themselves. Visual-wise, however, as previously stated, there have been no changes found between the Japanese and English versions. Just only when you take a look at the game's writing can differences be found. What are your thoughts about how Xenoblade 2's localization was handled? Please leave your thoughts in the comments below, and if localization changes like these are an area of gaming that you are interested in, please make sure to subscribe and set notifications to on. Until next time, thank you for watching.